Hello and welcome to the Sweet Granny's garden. Now here behind me I have an alder tree, and most of the alder trees in Europe, especially in Spain, have been taken out by a pathogen called Phytophthora Alni. Now this, if you might remember some of my past videos, is going to be the centre part, the geyser part of my rose fountain. But the problem was, because it was infected by Phytophthora Alni, it became sick. And of course then I got a secondary invasion of tree borers. Now, before I start taking the branches off to leave my pole, I needed to get rid of the tree borers, which can actually weaken that central stem or that central trunk. So I needed a very targeted systemic insecticide, because I'm very, very careful with insecticide, and it has to be targeted. I don't want to infect anything below the ground, anything beside it. I only want to affect the tree borers inside this. So targeted for me means tree implants or endotherapy. So I'm just going to show you how I used it, and for this I'm going to go very, very quickly back 2 weeks in time. Now, before I can start phase 2 of the rose fountain, which would be basically removing all of these lateral branches and leaving just the central trunk I want to use for the geyser part of my rose fountain, I need to make this tree as stable as possible. Now, to do that I need to get rid of all of these tree borers that are literally eating this tree from the inside out. Now, tree borers are notoriously difficult to eradicate, and is one of the very, very few occasions where I would recommend a systemic insecticide. Now, there are 2 methods for applying a systemic insecticide. One which I like, and one which I absolutely do not recommend whatsoever. The one I don't recommend is soil drenching. You would come in with your container of water and your insecticide mixed into it, and you would see the width of the canopy of a tree come down, and the whole of this area you would soak or drench in this contaminated insecticide, and with the hope that the roots of the tree are going to absorb it, take it up into the trunk and push it right up into the canopy to all parts of the tree. Does it work? Yes, it does. Problem: where you've drenched, it will be absorbed by every single root, not just the root of your plant. And anything that's underneath, both on top of the soil and underneath the soil, is going to die. Good bugs, bad bugs, every bugs. It kills everything in sight. And we don't want that, do we? So what I am going to be using today are 3 implants. Each little implant contains this systemic insecticide, and it is very targeted. It will be actually drilled right inside the tree, and therefore it cannot affect any other plant around it, and will be absorbed only by this tree and nothing else but this tree. That's very, very important for me, and for, I'd say, most gardeners. And today I'm going to be showing you very quickly how you do that. Now, before we start, there are just a couple of things we need to check. Well, probably about 3 things we need to check. First of all, the thickness of the bark. In this one it's very easy to tell, because of course this bark is peeling because the tree is dying. So the thickness of the bark is about 2 millimeters. I'll put that up on the screen now in inches, but not very thick at all. And what you want to do when you're drilling is to get through this layer, and you're going to leave the top or the outside of the capsule just inside the cambium layer, which is this layer underneath here, which you can see very easily because the tree is peeling. And the other thing you need to make sure is that the tree is in active growth. Now, this tree is in the process of dying, but it still has enough leaf growth to be able to absorb the insecticide that I'm going to plant at the base of the tree right into the canopy. It mightn't do it in 2 days, but if I give it a week or 10 days, it should do the trick. So now I'm going to show you what I need. Right, the first thing we need are all the safety things. So goggles I'm going to put straight on now. Gloves I'm going to put on as well. These have got to be chemical resistant gloves, so your little material ones won't do. You need something just in case there's a little splash. There shouldn't be, but just in case, you need something that's waterproof. The next thing I need is a drill bit for wood, a small hammer, a little marker, a measuring tape, my drill, and something to tap in. And whatever you tap in should not be pointed. That is extremely important. The next thing I want to show you are the actual capsules themselves. I'm going to just take one out. So this is what it looks like. This is the flat or wider part. Then the actual insecticide or systemic insecticide is inside that little pink inner capsule. And basically you drill the hole, put it in, lightly tap it in, and this wider part will actually plug the hole itself or plug the wound. And it'll be left in there forever. You never ever try and remove it. So how deep do I need my hole? So what I do is measure. I get my drill bit. I get my capsule. I remember that to get to the cadmium layer, I have to leave room for the bark as well, and a teensy bit more. So just about here is where I'm going to make my mark. So I'm going to put this mark the whole way around. And as soon as I see what I'm drilling, reach this mark, I stop. The next thing I need is my measuring tape. What I need to know is how many implants to use, because I know I've got to space them every 4 inches, but I want to know how many I have to use. So at 4 foot above the ground, you pull it out, measure around the circumference of the tree, and then divide it by the recommended spacing, which in my case is 4 inches. It might sound complicated, but let's put it in dead easy terms. Imagine the circumference of your tree is 40 inches. Your spacing is supposed to be every 4 inches. Therefore, you're going to need 10 implants. I've pre-measured my tree. In actual fact, it's 18. So that would give me about 4.5. So somewhere between 4 or 5 implants is what I need. Right, so we're going to start making our first hole. Look for a point not right at the base of the tree, but close to the base of the tree. I'm about a foot above ground, and I'm going to spiral the holes around. I'm not going to work in a horizontal line. I'm actually going to work in a spiral with the correct spacing every 4 inches. But each hole, although it's spiraling, must be perpendicular. So let's get started. We have our mark on the bit. We're about a foot above, and we're just going to drill our first hole now. Next, what you do is get your capsule, place it into the hole, like that. Get a small hammer, gently tap it in. I can't keep tapping because it's level with the bark. So what I do is get some sort of instrument. It could be a dowel plug. In my case, I'm just going to use this because it's what I have. As long as there's no sharp edges that can puncture that, because we never want to puncture this. So I'm just going to put that against that. And then hopefully, lightly tap the back. Now you can see I'm just about slightly over a millimetre here, so I need to go just a slight bit deeper to get into that cambium layer. And that is it. All I need to do now is repeat in a spiral, put the other 4 or 5 in total, and that is it, and then sit back and wait. Now just a few words about implants. For me personally, it is the best and safest method of applying a systemic insecticide. For me, things like soil drench or spraying, you get it everywhere, you can inhale it, it gets on your clothes. To me, that's terribly dangerous. And this particular implant is restricted. Sometimes you have to be an arborist, or sometimes you have to have a license, but to me it's basic common sense. Put on a pair of goggles, a pair of waterproof gloves, long sleeves, just to be on the safe side, and then follow the instructions. The only problem I can see arising is if you don't follow the instructions and you don't put a wide enough hole or a deep enough hole, and then you're trying to pull it backwards when it's in, which you should never do, and it might rupture in your hand, and then there is a problem. But if you follow the instructions for the width and the depth of the hole, and have your protective clothing on just in case, you're away on a hack. Within 2 to 3 days, or in my case with an unhealthy tree, a week to 10 days, it's going to absorb, the sap is going to pass through that capsule, it's going to take the systemic insecticide upwards, up through the trunk, out through the branches into the whole of the canopy, and it's going to kill those borers dead. But it's not only systemic insecticides that you can get inside these implants. You can, in actual fact, get fertilizer. Now, if you have a lovely tree that's beginning to wobble, and for some reason it's not absorbing through the roots, you can get one containing fertilizer, inject it into the tree, and then it's absorbed directly, and the tree should recover in next to no time. You have to use them sparingly, and know when to use them and how to use them, but it's certainly something worth looking into. So, in about 2 weeks' time, for you, a click of a finger, we'll be back. Okay, so we're back to the present. Now the endotherapy at this stage would have done its job. So what I need to do now is remove all the lateral branches, those that are completely dead now, and those that have got leaves on. Don't worry about the ones that have got leaves on. We're not killing a healthy tree, we're just taking off the leaves because they've done their job. They've been able to absorb that insecticide up into the canopy. They've done their job, so now they can be removed. The only problem is I'm afraid of heights. I'm okay with this ladder because it's got sort of like a place to hang on to, but as I get a bit further up I might need to get the big ladder out and Hang on for dear life. It's not going to be very elegant, but I'm going to get the job done. Height or no height? Now what I need to do is just get a big ladder out, and about this height, just leaving this little V-shaped fork, which is going to support the top of my geyser and the beginning of my rose fountain. I need to lop this all off and then just set that as the final height of the geyser. So I'm going to have to get the big ladder out. Oh dear. Well, it is Murphy's Law and the battery's dead, so I'm going to have to go back to the old-fashioned way, the pruning saw. 1 minute. Well, this would start just when I'm at the highest point. We can always go back to the old-fashioned way. If you're worried about the car, don't be. I had strategically placed the second ladder to catch that branch as it fell, and it did. So, chapeau. Now, the next thing I need to do is get out garden wire, cut off lengths like yay length, and then about every foot up the tree, from the base right up to the top, well, as far as I can go, just loop it round, getting ready for when this starts to spiral up. And I'm going to start training the bottom half, because it's amazing how much growth is put on in just that month it's been planted. I took off the transport stake about 2 weeks ago because it was doing so well, and I'm just going to let the branches flop again and then start training it properly in a spiral up that trunk. And hopefully in next growing season the actual geyser part will be flowering, and hopefully it may be even close to the top or even starting to sprout outwards, because once it sprouts outwards, through gravity it's going to start falling and I'm going to get the fountain part of my rose fountain. So let's get cracking with the wires. Now with these little clips, I just want to get in and start training this round. If I pull back, at the moment this looks a bit like a totem pole, but it won't. In the future it's going to be my beautiful geyser and then sustain my rose fountain. And as you see, it's what I wanted, the centerpiece of this new rose border. This autumn I'm going to be planting this with about 6 different types of roses, and then this is my centerpiece. So next year it should be well on its way to becoming the vision I have in my head. That's the general idea anyway. Well, it's now starting to get very, very hot. It's just coming up to 11:30 in the morning. It's going to reach 100 plus this evening. So in this type of temperature, in the heat of July and August, what I do is I garden in the morning up until 11:30, and then I come out again after 7 p.m. at night. And at midday and mid-morning, I'm inside doing other things, like I've got to start the dinner now, so I'd better get going. So this video has been like a two-prong video. On the one hand, we dealt with endotherapy. For me, if you do have to use a systemic insecticide, and for tree borers it is absolutely necessary, then please use a very targeted element like endotherapy or like these tree implants. On the other hand was getting my totem pole or my geyser ready for my future rose fountain and starting to train the Lady Banks rose, the Alder version, up it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I want to see you here next week with me in Granny's garden. For the moment it's bye now. And I'll just leave you now with a few images of the stargazer lily.